Hey guys, Derek Blue Collar Chess. In today's video, I want to discuss kind of like decision making. I'm also going to discuss rule of the square, counting, and who knows? Who knows? I'm going to try to keep it somewhat short. But so White just played Rook to F5, giving Black the option to take the Rook or to keep the Rooks on. So the question would be whether playing something like King G6 or playing something like Rook to C6 would be better. Rook anywhere, really, okay? So if you keep the Rooks on, what you're saying is that you think that Rook can keep that pawn from queening. So if you look at the position and just kind of evaluate the position, I would say that's not the right way to go about this position, okay? I mean, you may have to, but realistically, the Black King is stuck on H7 for the time being. Even if he gets moving, by the time he does, the White King's going to be down the board, probably somewhere in the center. That pawn is going to have moved quite a bit. I would say, if nothing else, while Black is dealing with that pawn, the King will be over on the other side, scooping up the other pawns, or the Rook, or something along those lines. So I think moving the Rook or doing anything besides taking the Rook is a bad move. So what's the benefits of taking the Rook? So once the Rook takes the Rook, White has to do something. So it's a forcing move. So it's forcing him to respond to that capture. So now after the G-pawn takes the Rook, you have kind of a fixed structure, right? So White's going to have a pawn on C3, a pawn on F3, and a pawn on F5. And you're going to have two pawns on H6 and G7, and it's your move. So looking at that position in your mind, because you want to be able to visualize that, and this is kind of the key. You want to be able to at least go 3-4 moves in and be able to visualize the board pretty clearly, so you kind of can develop a plan from there, okay? So in that position, the White's F pawn can't move anywhere, and you can't really push your F pawn anywhere either. So, but your G pawn rather. So your G pawn keeps the F pawn from moving. So if he ever moves to F6, the G pawn is just going to take it. So in that case, there's going to be two opposing F pawns, and you've got an H pawn, just going up the board. So by taking that Rook, Black has given himself a pass H pawn. So this is where the rule of the square or counting comes in handy, okay? So I'm going to go to that position now. Well, first I'm going to show you the other position of just the Rook movement, so that way you can kind of visualize what I mean. So now, yeah, so you'd play something like King B3 here. I don't know, like something like G6 maybe, and then Rook to D5, and then so you get this position here, and Black will probably just kind of shimmy his king over to try to help stop the pawn. But I mean, this pawn is already moving. That king is coming down the board. This is not a position that I think you would want to play. So you can just kind of evaluate that and just kind of rule it out. So let's look at Rook takes F5. Let's look at G takes F5. Okay, so here I've drawn some squares. I'm actually going to get rid of the squares. So I'm going to show you counting first. So you want to be able to count. So that way you don't have to go, okay, I move my pawn here. He moves his pawn there. I move my pawn here. Because I think that gets a little confusing. So it's better to be able to count. So you know it's Black's move. So you count for Black first, okay? So you're going to count H5, H4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 squares. So the king has to be on this square on his fourth move to stop this pawn from queening, okay? So 1, 2, 3, 4. So you know that he can't do that. Okay, so just by counting, you know that you can queen that pawn. So then the question becomes whether he can queen one of his pawns. All right, so you know you need five squares. So Black moves first. So now you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So after you queen, white queens immediately. Okay. So that means you're going to have 2 queens, white's going to have 2 pawns, and it's black's move. So he'll probably take one of the pawns real quick. There's no way to skewer the king to the queen. So I would say that's probably a drawn position. Okay, so you know rook takes rook is at least a draw as opposed to a loss like the other position was. Okay, so then you have to start kind of calculating and figuring out, whether you can stop this pawn, and that's the only way that you're going to win. So you're going to win the game by queening your pawn and stopping his pawn from queening. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of these circles here. Now we're going to talk about the rule of the square. Okay, so the rule of the square is, so I'm going to move this up one so that, yeah, okay, right here, I already have the square in there. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of this stuff, though. How do we get rid of this stuff? Good Lord. There we go. All right, sorry about that, guys. I don't use a lot of arrows and stuff in my in my personal life. So the idea of the square is this. So I just moved there. So now the square, now it's white to move, but the square for this pawn to queen is 5 squares up. So it's 5 squares over, 5 squares up, 5 squares over, 5 squares. So it's just a square, right? Okay, and now it's going to be white's move. And so, whoops. So the square for this pawn right now, because it's white's move, is here. So you know before he even moves that your king is in the square. Now as soon as he moves down 1, though, okay, so as soon as the pawn moves to c4, the square now changes. Oops, I meant to keep all the squares on, but the square now changes to this. Okay. All right, so white's next move changes the square. So you've got to keep inside that square to stop the pawn. And you know your next move can be g8. So as long as you're inside the square, you're always going to stop that pawn. And any move that he does that takes him away from going after this pawn, you're just going to push your pawn, right? You're trying to extend your square by minimizing their square. And I know that's a little confusing to say it like that. So I'm going to go back to g takes f5. h5 is the move here. And then he's going to play this. Yeah, as you can see. But you immediately have to play king g8 because you're staying inside that square. Okay, so we know that this is a win. This is negative 48.6 by the computer. So how you would get here, so you wouldn't even really have to calculate all that stuff. All you'd have to calculate is whether you can catch his pawn and whether or not he can catch your pawn. Okay, so you did that within the first, I don't know, we thought, what moves did you have to actually do? Rook takes rook, pawn takes rook, and then you just had to count, right? That was all you had to do at that point, and you know that you're winning. This is a simple concept that takes a long time to get used to. I'm still not used to it, to be honest with you. I just wanted to show it because, one, I want to get better at it myself. I think it's important to see these type of things. So something like if he plays like c5 here, you just kind of want to stay inside that square. And as you can see, so you're constantly staying inside the square. So now if he starts moving towards your pawn, though, so now we're gonna look at this square now. So you're still 5. So if you were being careless here and didn't know about the rule of the square, and say you played like king e7, you're now in a draw, okay? So he's now inside your square. And you cannot queen your pawn. And you probably have to be very careful here not to end up losing now too, because of the 2 pawns. I mean, I think it's still a draw. But yeah, so just by using the rule of the square or counting, you can solve this puzzle after 2 moves. It's really kind of a 2-move puzzle, right? So anyways, this has been Derek with Blue Collar Chess. Hope it's been helpful. You know what? I apologize. Let's just take a look at it all, right? but I've decided the best moves are just so you can visualize it. So that's what that looks like if the king chases the pawn. Now, if the pawn starts pushing, this is what this is going to look like. Okay, so he comes over one more, you go up, you're going to queen, he does this, you stop the queening. That's all you have to do. All right, so now for real this time, this is Derek with Blue Collar Chess. I hope this has been informative for you. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I'll do what I can to help you. Because sometimes something that seems simple to me may not be simple to you. And I am here to help people. I had people that used to help me a lot and would show me these things and would, I got lucky. I had like a Russian master that worked with me. So I was able to play with a dude and he helped me out a lot. So I want to kind of give back to the chess community. And this is why I'm doing these videos. It's the only reason why I'm doing these videos as of right now. So, all right, guys, this is Derek Blue Collar Chess. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Talk to you guys later.